Charles Harper Webb was born in Philadelphia, and he grew up in the suburbs of Houston, Texas. He says that there was a lush forest of pine and oak at the end of his backyard, and that he played bows and arrows and caught some fish in a pond or a creek, and that he learned to love the wildlife and beauty of that woods. He went to school at Rice University, and while he was there, he decided to change his major from physics to English. As he said, he decided to do something frivolous with his life. He's joking, of course, but in terms of conventional wisdom, English is not exactly a place that's a road for prosperity. What I find interesting about him is that he gravitated toward English teaching in a very circuitous way. He's multi-talented. He sings, plays guitar. He was with a rock band and toured with them, and for a while made his living with a rock band. Ending up in at the University of Washington, he decided to get a master's degree, and he did it in I think it's called professional writing or commercial writing, and then he went for a PhD in psychology. So he apparently made a pretty good living as a therapist, but when he moved to Long Beach, he ended up teaching composition, and he decided that he wanted to teach as a profession. So he's been at Long Beach, as far as I can tell, for maybe the better part of a couple of decades. And he has, in the meantime, published 12 books. He has a very recent novel, and he has a particular approach to poetry, which has caught on certainly in his part of Southern California and elsewhere also. And it's called stand-up poetry. I suppose that the image or the concept of stand-up poetry comes from stand-up comedy, and there's an element of that in it. But also, I think perhaps that Edward Field's book, Stand Up Friend with Me, was a kind of inspiration, where he could see that a narrative line and revealing of intimate things in your life, that this is a good approach to writing. It's different from, say, the neo-surrealism that a lot of people are learning in creative writing programs. He has a book of essays called 1 Million MFAs Are Not Enough. And it gives you an idea of his departure from the usual approach to learning the tricks of the trade in creative writing. In the first essay of that book, he has an explanation of what he believes poetry should be. And then he put together an anthology called Stand Up Poetry. This is it right here. And you can see by some of the things that he wants to see in poetry, and which he does in his own poetry, where he's going. He thinks there should be humor in poetry. You can be lugubrious, but you should be humorous too. It should be performable. Poetry should have clarity. It should be accessible. It should use natural language. He agrees with Wordsworth in that respect, but people have to be reminded of that simple truth. There should be flights of fantasy, a strong individual voice, an emotional punch, close relationship to fiction. There should be some sort of narrative line, or he likes to gravitate toward that. Not every poem necessarily, but it should be a kind of marker or guideline for the course that a poem takes. He's very fond of urban and popular culture, as well as being a trout fisherman and very cognizant of nature imagery and of the whole wild environment. There should be wide open subject matter. That is, nothing is alien to the poet. When I read his poems and hear what he has to say about them, I think of what John Donne was doing in his work. Donne came sort of at the tail end of the Renaissance, where there was a lot of excellent work done, what Donne did was he sort of stretched the imagination, his own and readers' imagination also. He had he had imaginative distance between the thing talked about and the thing it's compared to, or the term of comparison. And that's what you see in his poetry. The images and metaphors can take two or three things that would ordinarily be totally unrelated, and he can make them live in excellent communicative poetry. He has been called the most inventive and accessible poet in Southern California. Probably that praise should be widened geographically. That is, he's one of the most inventive and accessible writers now working in the United States. When I was looking for a way to epitomize his work, I decided that I couldn't do better than quote the introduction to this book of his, Reading the Water. Reading the water for a trout fisherman means that you look where the logs are, how the current's flowing, where the dark water is for deep holes, and the various other things. And in a way, he's reading the world like he reads the water. But this is what that excellent, consummate rhetorician Edward Hirsch has to say about Charles Harper Webb's poetry. Charles Harper Webb has a wild, inventive energy, a quirky, at times even manic wit, and a deep sense of wonder at the world. His poems are filled with curiosities, with odd facts and details, with unlikely anecdotes, all of which he takes personally. As a poet, he is a wiseacre, a troublemaker, part stand-up comic, part anthropologist, part visionary. He is funny and takes gleeful pleasure in sending up various cultural illusions, stereotypes and fantasies, especially his own. He can be withering about contemporary life. His irony gives him no rest, and yet he is a romantic, despite himself, a singer of tales, a poet of praise. So let's hear it for Charles Harper Webb.
Well, thanks, Ed. Boy, I better be good after that. It's going to be a big disappointment if I'm not, to me. Well, today I'm going to read, I've been working on fiction quite a bit, and I'm working on poetry again. So I'm going to read a little bit of fiction towards the end, but I'm going to start off with poetry. And you said like 45 minutes, right?
Make it good.
I just did my watch so I, don't go over. And this is I'm happy to, if people have questions or something, this isn't going to be a formal reading. I mean, you guys look like you're all friends, and I know some of you. So we'll make this informal and hopefully fun. I'm going to start off with a poem from my latest book, Sidebend World. And that's boy, the internet doesn't want to say sidebend. They always want to turn it into sideband, but I'm really talking about a sidebend, just like, a stretch. And to set the scene of the poem, I think it's set in the poem, but just in case, um, imagine somebody kind of tired after a long flight to Hawaii who's got a rented car and just pulled up in their condo uh, and is ready to go to bed. So this is Sidebend World. When I lean to my right, left arm stretched over my head to help relax back muscles knotted up from hefting heavy luggage yesterday, the purple dawn-brushed ocean tilts to my right too. All scorpion fish and whales and giant squid tilt right, having to swim now on an angle to parallel the surface of the sea that swells and settles on an angle that increases the farther to my right I go. All cars in the condo parking lot incline. The maps, rental contracts, half-eaten burgers boxed and forgotten in vacationers' trunks shift, slide, fall to the right side. All waves tilt as they roar toward shore like humpbacked monsters hissing angry spume that leans, as does the lava Kilauea extruded last night, and every tree and shrub now dressing up in day-glow green. Doves in flight, kak-kak-kak-kak, like scouts that shout a warning, palm to slanted palm. Bird-brained egotists, they think the cosmos orbits around them. Speaking of which, the sky tilts, and the clouds tinted orange and pink, and the air, which gleams pale blue, the faded sliver of a moon tilts, insisting, I'm still here. And way up high, the planets spinning through space feel themselves, if they can feel, shifting right until I straighten and the universe does too. So I've taken to reading this to begin my readings because I think it really does kind of fit my approach to poetry in general, which is Emily Dickinson said, tell the truth, but tell it slant. And, I literally kind of look at stuff from a different angle, something that's going to make it interesting. I'm a big believer in what Robert Frost supposedly said, which is no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader. So I'm looking to surprise myself with something unusual and fun that I want to share, something that seems, oh, hey, this is cool. Check this out. So that's what I'm going to try to do tonight. I decided I'm going to go back and read some poems, some older poems that I haven't read in a long time. These are going to be from a new and selected poems that Pitt did maybe 10 years ago called Shadow Ball. I got this idea because I've started putting on my website poems from my first book, or the first well-published book, which was Reading the Water. Because it's out of print, and I just thought, why not put them up? Maybe somebody will get a kick out of them. So this is a poem. I guess Christmas is coming sooner or later, soon. And this is a poem from that first book, Reading the Water, and it's called The Death of Santa Claus. He's had chest pains for weeks, but doctors don't make house calls to the North Pole. He's let his Blue Cross lapse, blood tests make him faint, hospital gowns always flap open, waiting rooms upset his stomach, and it's only indigestion anyway, he thinks, until, feeding the reindeer, he feels as if a monster fist has grabbed his heart and won't stop squeezing. He can't breathe, and the beautiful white world he loves goes black. And he drops on his jelly belly in the snow, and Mrs. Claus tears out of the toy factory wailing, and the elves wring their little hands, and Rudolph's nose blinks like a sad ambulance light. And in a tract house in Houston, Texas, I'm 8, telling my mom that stupid kids at school say Santa's a big fake. And she sits with me on our purple flowered couch and takes my hand, tears in her throat, the terrible news rising in her eyes. Yeah, that poem does things that I like to see happen in a poem. It starts off funny and it takes a different turn. And a lot of times my poems start off with something that strikes me as peculiar or funny or strange. And then I see where they go. I try to trust my unconscious. And I guess I've got a sad unconscious, because they almost always take a turn towards something darker. And that seems to be kind of right for the way human life is. This is a poem that came out of exactly that kind of a situation. I forget what. I think there was some exhibit at an LA museum of paintings taken from scenes from the Bible. And it struck me how interesting the stories were in the Bible. And I was reading through probably Genesis, trying to find some stories I could steal. And it occurred to me that there were a lot of names in Genesis that were strange to my English-speaking ears and eyes, that seemed kind of funny, and that only showed up once. And I thought, yeah, but hey, if you get one mention in the Bible, that's not bad. So I wrote this poem called Biblical Also Rans. Hanok, Palu, Hezron, Carmi, Jemuel, Ohad, Zohar, Shuni. One Genesis mentions all you got. Zephion, Muppum, Arodi, lost in a list even the most devout skip over, like small towns on the road to LA. How tall were you, Shillam? What was your favorite color, Ard? Did you love your wife, Iob? Not even her name survives. Adam, Eve, Abel, Cain. These are the stars crowds surge to see. Each hour, thousands of Josephs, Jacobs, Benjamins are born. How many Oholibamas? How many Mizahs draw first breath today? Gatam, Kenaz, Ruel, sidemen in the band. Waiters who bring the Perignon and disappear. Yet they loved dawn's garnet light as much as Moses did. They drank wine with as much delight. I thought my life would line me up with Samuel, Isaac, Joshua. Instead, I stand with Bazamoth, Hagla, Amahud. Theirs are the names I honor. Theirs the death I feel. Their children's tears loud as any on the corpse of Abraham, their smiles as mist, the earth as desolate without them, pebbles on a hill, crumbs carried off by ants, Jeush, Dishan, Nahath, Shammah. So once again, I had no idea where that poem was going to go. I mean, it surprised me, and that's what I like. So here I'm just moving ahead a little bit in my oeuvre, and this one is from the one book that I had with Boa. We parted company, and I ended up with University of Wisconsin, and then with Pitt. But anyway, this is a poem, a poet that I like a great deal, and luckily he's left us a lot of great stuff. Is Tony Hoagland, and there was a line in one of his poems, well, actually two lines, and it's the epigraph to this poem, and it goes like this: the rest are chastised and reborn as salesmen and librarians. And if you read the poem, you'd certainly see that salesmen and librarians are not held up as the thing you want to grow up to be. But I resonated with this because my dad was a salesman and my mom was a librarian. So that provoked this poem, A Salesman and a Librarian. Mom smelled of books. Even Dad admitted between prospects, as he called everyone. In the checkout line at Vaughn's, he'd show strangers his coat, watch, pants, and say, "Make me an offer." "Shh," Mom would tell him, "honey, shh." When friends came over to play baseball, Dad hawked peanuts. Mom made the umpire whisper. All my parties were the slumber kind. At least nobody stayed awake to watch Mom catalog my clothes and toys, my cute sayings and minuscule misdeeds. I loved my parents, but prayed God would make them fun, like Joey's mom, whom people called Madam, and Lynn's dad before the cops dragged him away. Walking home from school, some days I'd miss our house. It made such scant impression. Or maybe I just couldn't bear to see Dad's car, always marked for sale, the lemonade stand where he sat all night, the garage stuffed with alphabetized newspapers and Kirkus reviews among unsold stain removers, world books, insurance policies. The vacuum cleaners especially haunted me, too sad even to dust off their bristly mustaches, too tired to raise on brontosaurus necks their plastic hammer heads. I gotta admit, that one made me laugh. It still does. I'm shameless, and then when I think things are funny, I'll laugh at my own stuff. This one I haven't read for a long time. I wrote it when I was much younger, but I already knew that I was in the baby boom and that we'd all die someday. So, I have a feeling a lot of you guys share my generation. Looks like baby boom people to me, at least a lot of you do. So I'm going to read this. It's got a grim title, but I hope that you'll find some humor in it too, and maybe some memories of childhood. This is called Death Comes to the Baby Boom. Fire drills didn't get us ready, or bomb shelters, or Dracula has risen from the grave. Not even Vietnam prepared us for the ice cream truck jingling stars and stripes forever as death waves pink torpedoes, exploding Eskimo pies. Death comes to us with a gray beard, leading a horse for picture taking. Who is this clown? Gabby Hayes? Bill quips and feels a vein in his head blow. Death comes to us as a new black and white TV. We watched Pinky Lee clutch his chest and fall, gasping, "Help me," to 15 million kids. Still, we're amazed when death, looking like Howdy Doody, Phineas T. Bluster, Princess Summer, Fall, Winter, Spring, delivers milk laced with arsenic to our front door. Our friends scare us. Claire's breasts, Harold's belly, Bobby's hair. We dodge mirrors, skittish as vampires. Bad thought alarm. Call 911 to report an unsettling thing. Death comes to us as the Gillette fight of the week. Turn it on. Sugar Ray's bony fists floor us. Safety razors slit our jugulars. Death comes humming, Brill cream, a little dab of yeah. Death uses wild root cream oil. Charlie. Death vows, someday, Alice, pow, right to the moon. Death comes as a Dumbo pen, blacking our teeth. Death comes as a brain-eating Davy Crockett hat. Death comes as Elvis, crooning heart heart failure hotel, hound dog ripping our throats, hit 45 screaming like dad's circular saw. Death comes to us as a Mark Wilson magic set. Climb in the box, you won't climb out. Death comes as a black hula hoop. Slip it over your head, you disappear. Those of you who are too young to catch my references, lucky you. Okay, that's it. Yeah, Ed mentioned that I grew up around woods, and I grew up, hunting and fishing in Texas. I grew up around, loving the outdoors, loving animals. Weirdly enough, hunting made me love animals more, to the point where I stopped hunting them. But when I was a boy, I think that that old DNA was really strong in me, and I just wanted to get out. And to me, being in the woods was to kill stuff. Kind of horrible to think about now, but I think that's probably in all of our DNA. But at any rate, where I lived and everything, it looked like things were endless. It looked like, to me as a little boy, that there were endless birds and endless animals and endless butterflies. And it like the passenger pigeons, which were a little bit before my time, but apparently, in the 1800s, they would cover the sky with flocks of them, and now they're all gone. So this is a poem I wrote, maybe in penance, but also just because I love animals. It's called The Animals Are Leaving. One by one, like guests at a late party, they shake our hands and step into the dark. Arabian ostrich, long-eared kit fox, mysterious starling. One by one, like sheep counted to close our eyes, they leap the fence and disappear into the woods. Atlas bear, passenger pigeon, North Island laughing owl, great auk, dodo, eastern wapiti, Badlands bighorn sheep. One by one, like grade school friends, they move away and fade out of our memories. Portuguese ibex, bluebuck, aurochs, Oregon bison, Spanish imperial eagle, Japanese wolf, hawksbill sea turtle, Cape lion, heath hen, Rheatea thrush. One by one, like children at a fire drill, they march outside and keep marching, though teachers cry, "Come back." Waved albatross, white-bearded spider monkey, pygmy chimpanzee, Australian night parrot, turquoise parakeet, Indian cheetah, Korean tiger, eastern harbor seal, Ceylon elephant, great Indian rhinoceros. One by one, like actors after a play that ran for years and wowed the world, they link their hands and bow before the curtain falls. Thank you. Yeah. If anybody has any questions or thoughts or anything, I'm just going to take a brief little time to talk to you guys if you want to. You don't have to. I'm gonna go over to my other book, and I say I'm gonna keep an eye on the time, so I give myself a little time to read the opening of my novel, which I'm very happy with. So I'm glad to get a chance to do both. I mean, I think it's great to get a chance to read poems and fiction at the same time. When Ed said I could do that, man, I was happy. I thought, cool. Let's see. Ed mentioned that I stopped majoring in physics and majored in English, and I did actually think at the time that it was doing something frivolous with my life, but I also knew it was becoming really clear to me, because I went to Rice, which is a really high-powered science engineering school, and I noticed that although I did okay, I didn't love it the way some of the guys I was in school with did. I mean, I had my first year, my freshman year, I had in my chemistry lab partner was a guy who also played guitar. He played classical guitar and I played rock guitar, but we jammed together some. But this guy loved chemistry so much that he was stealing stuff from the lab so that he could make a lab in his dorm room. And I couldn't wait to get out of there. And I went and played with my band. That was what I really felt like doing. And so it became more and more clear to me that I didn't have the fire in the belly that some of these guys did for science, but I had it for the arts. I had it for music and I had it for writing. And I just thought, well, you know, my dad wanted me to be a medical doctor because that's what he wanted to be. But my mom was a librarian and she encouraged me. Well, my dad did too. They encouraged me to do what made me happy. And because I did well in school, and they always thought, well, if you can do that, then, you know, it's kind of up to you. And I just decided to go for it. I had no idea that I'd ever be able to make anything out of it, but it just seemed like I was real interested in those things. But that's a long intro to the fact that I'm still really interested in science, and there's all kinds of science in my poems. And here's a poem that deals with just the names of neurotransmitters, because it's fascinating to me that the people we are is so dictated by the neurotransmitters and how they're working in our brain. And it's also fascinating to me that these neurotransmitters go back hundreds of millions of years, which means in some way that even rather primitive animals, cockroaches and stuff like that, actually they share neurotransmitters with us, which means they share something in the way we feel. I mean, they may not have they don't apparently have consciousness like we do, but anyway, that just fascinates me. So anyway, long introduction for this poem called Getting to Know My Neurotransmitters. And again, I started it as kind of a joke because some of the transmitters' names made me think of like cartoon kind of figures. So you'll see that going pretty quickly. Getting to know my neurotransmitters. Serotonin, with her blue bonnet and gingham dress that rustles on her way to church. Gentle nurse who salves the bites and abrasions of the day, calms me when my feet twirl like propellers and convinces me to slide the butcher knife back in its block. Endorphin, with her corkscrewy red hair, her southern comfort voice that gets me goose loose, lifty drifty, creamy dreamy, stone silly as a martyr by marshmallows I catch and eat with the whipped cream the clouds plip plop onto my tongue. Dopamine, smarter than he looks with his buck teeth and straw hat, nutty norepinephrine on his arm. 5 minutes with them, and I'm fortune's son. My muscles twitch, thoughts siren through my brain's clogged streets. Fun? Yes, it is, but stay too long, and weathermen start spreading rumors that I'm Mary Magdalene. Kill the bitch, dogs bark as I drive by. High time then for acetylcholine, lithe in her sports bra, wing-footed triathlete who relays orders from my brain, then lights my muscles' fuses so that I can dance or scratch my ear or run, so that when my eyes find you in bed, my hands and lips and other parts can do to perfection every little thing your brain wants done. So, ended up being kind of a love poem. I didn't see that one coming either.
Charles, I have a question.
Okay, sure.
These last three poems, you've had the extinct animals, the biblical figures, the neurotransmitters. do you actively look for something when you want to write, like a prompt that, or just, or does it suddenly come to you, you want to write about neurotransmitters? But it almost seems like you're kind of actively search out these things and then write about them.
I don't really, those poems, at least, I didn't actively search them out. I mean, but I keep my eyes and ears open for things, and I have searched some things out, and I will in fact read you one that I searched out. But I have been known to read in World's Weird News and stuff like that for something that will just kind of trigger my imagination, but it's always something that I hope isn't too obvious. It's just something that strikes me as a little weird, a little slanted, like the neurotransmitters poem. I'm sure I just was, I read the names of the neurotransmitters, which, and I thought, serotonin, that sounds like Sarah. I mean, just as simple a thing as that. And I say, well, let me kind of make these characters out of that. And I told you the story of how I found, I came to the biblical also-rans. I was looking for poems, but I wasn't looking for that poem. I was looking for stories that I could turn into poems. So yeah, I mean, I keep my eyes and ears open for weird stuff, because even if I don't write a poem about it, I like weird stuff. It gives, I get a kick out of it. So let me read you this one. You guys undoubtedly remember the days when a magazine called Weekly World News could be found with National Enquirer at the checkout lines in supermarkets. And that, I loved the Weekly World News so much that my wife actually got me a 1-year subscription to it. I thought, I actually used to say to people that I thought it was the greatest surrealist journal in the US. It just had the goofiest stories, and it had some recurring characters. One of them was Bat Boy, who was not, who didn't work for the Dodgers or anything. He was a half bat, half child that was supposedly discovered, I think, hanging upside down in a cave in Romania or Transylvania or something like that. And I wrote a poem about him. But the one that really got me, because his picture would be on the cover sometimes, and the picture was as described in this poem, it was the world's fattest man. And he was like 3,000 or some odd pounds, probably 3 times what even the real world's fattest person could weigh. I mean, it was so grotesque that it was comical. It was exaggerated to such a degree. So I thought I wanted, so the headline of one of these articles was this: "World's fattest man is missing." And that just tickled me in a number of ways. And again, I started off thinking, well, that's funny. And it didn't take me but a line for this poem to turn sad. So I'm going to read this one to you, and you'll see what I mean. World's fattest man is missing. When I weighed 200 pounds, no one could miss me. Sunny Day Play School trucked in a special desk and let me use the teacher's pot. Did you see that? People would say. At 400, I started fading. When the boys chose sides, they didn't look at me. When I asked Tina to the prom, she turned as if I weren't there. At 1/2 ton, I couldn't squeeze out of my house to be seen. I dodged mirrors like a vampire, so they stopped reflecting me. Now people stare at my photo, bloated toad with tiny tadpole feet, my pea head grinning like the world's biggest 3,010-pound joke. In person, I'm like Earth's curvature, my scale too vast to see. People mistake me for some water-sculpted mountain. Parts keep avalanching down. Once the flesh stops quivering, I'm very still. Matter ceases to exist when movement stops. That is my goal as I sit absorbing stillness, or is it absorbing me? Houseflies doze on my forehead. Spiders nest in every crack. Soon my weight will make me fall into myself. My gravity so strong, not even light escapes. So again, no idea that he was going to turn into a black hole, but that's what happened. So, okay. Oh, here. Okay, here's another one that came. I wasn't scouting for it, but this was another thing I saw at a checkout line, because there's, as you well know, there, in addition to those weird tabloids, alas, Weekly World News is no longer among them. There are women's magazines that generally have some impossibly beautiful woman on the cover. And one day I saw one that was particularly attractive and well, I'll just put it, well, I won't even say any more because the title of the poem gives it away. But there she was on the cover. And so the title of my poem, which moves right into the poem, is "The woman on the cover of Glamour magazine would not look twice at me. She's so spunky, confident, devil-may-care in her crimson blouse, her violet eyes so full of tigress in bed and tyrant in the boardroom that her auburn hair waves in the breeze of her own forcefulness, tousled and churning as if she's flying her latest rescue. Lucky man, like a babe in her slim, muscular arms, hearing the cheers of earthbound females who think they can be her by shooting, metaphorically, this magazine into their veins, whence it will blast its magic to their brains as she streaks on her own power through clouds, puffy pink as pillows on the Louis XIV's bed in which she deigns to sip the world's best wine before attacking the Krav Maga workout that keeps her abs so tight, her buns so trim, her shoulders able to heft effortlessly the weight of her natural D cups, even hunched over the equation she's developing to link at last general relativity with the quantum world of ultra tiny particles, one of which I am compared to her." Now, I got a kick out of that, I have to admit. So you see, the science, even the physics, keeps coming into my poems. Yes, I never really got away from it. Let's see, what's another one I can do for you guys? Yeah, this is a kind of science poem in a way too. Yeah, I wish we were live, because the looks on you guys' faces, I think you'd be a really cool audience. I think we'd be loud and rowdy, which is good. I've always hated a really dour poetry reading where everybody's just all serioused out. I mean, I think art should have some fun involved in it. I certainly like that. I mean, the first book, well, there were tons of books that I liked, but the book that made me think that I might kind of enjoy being a writer when I was a little kid was Tom Sawyer, which is so full of humor as well as everything else. I mean, Tom Sawyer, to me at that age, seemed to absolutely embody boyhood, and I wanted to be Tom Sawyer. So, Mark Twain always had fun in his stuff. Okay, some of you may have heard of a bait ball, but I want to describe it a little bit, even though the poem talks about it, because if you haven't seen one, you might not believe it really exists. A bait ball is is a huge conglomeration of small fish, maybe anchovies or herring or something like that, that actually get into this huge group as a way to frustrate and confuse predators, and as a way to make sure that a lot of them will still survive, even though many will be killed when the predators, tuna or marlin or whatever, slash through the bait ball. But in order to really see one, you've got to scuba dive, and I did some scuba, but I never saw a bait ball. But a great thing about PBS is you can see all this stuff on TV, and so I saw the bait ball. I knew that they existed, but I'd never seen what they looked like, and then I saw them, and I wrote this poem, which every once in a while I'll write a poem that has a shape to it, and if it's easy. And this one, I don't know if you can see it. Maybe no, it doesn't look like it's getting it, but it's maybe you can see it a little. It looks kind of like a Christmas ornament, to tell you the truth. But it's you can think of it as being kind of circular or something like that. It's just, I thought it was kind of neat to do. So anyway, this is called Bait Ball. Not really round, not suitable for bouncing, not the name of any dance or game. A bait ball forms when little fish, a school, a horde, a mob, a myriad of smelt, shad, herring, mackerel, anchovies gather in one swirly swarm of shimmering. A fish tornado, a silver ghost evolved to befuddle and scare the tuna, dolphin, whales that want to gulp it down. London to the Luftwaffe was a bait ball. People are a bait ball to disease. Take him, not me. An army is a bait ball that bites back. Marlin smashed through a bait ball the way cannon shots smashed through soldiers at Bull Run. Ranks closing, the ball reforming, moving on. Awful to be a statistic, 1 in 10. To know your life depends on luck. Yet break away from the bait ball, and you're the straggler, ready to be culled. Your scant power and size stand hugely on display. To have a chance, you must give up your spiked hair and bite me shirt. You must give up your solitude, surrender to the silver ink blot, twirling top, globe glittering in the sun's beams, nettle flower, cactus barrel, whirling fur hat, spool of light, flying saucer turning inside out and outside in, wraith struggling to form a face, dream creature risen from the deep that cannot see its beauty move like God beneath the water's skin. So that one, I saw the thing on TV, and as I was looking at it, I tried to jot down images for it, metaphors, things it looked like, as quickly as I could. And that, as you can tell, formed the heart of the poem. And yeah, it's fun to do. I mean, I always tell my students that there needs to be fun in the writing process, because if there's not, you're not going to do it. I mean, who wants to go up and crucify themselves every day? I mean, I don't. You have to give yourself some positive reinforcement. And if you're writing poetry, it's not going to be in the form of big bucks. So you have to find, you have to find the things that reinforce you. And one of the things that reinforces me is just getting a kick out of writing poetry and seeing what my brain will toss me. Sometimes it doesn't toss me much, but other times it does. And then, then I get a poem and I'm happy. And I think, wow, this is cool. Life is good. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the opening to the novel. And then if whatever time I have left, I'll read a couple more poems. And maybe I won't have any time. I've got a closing poem that hopefully I'll get to, but if I don't, I don't. I thought to start with, I tell you a tiny bit about the book. This is the book, and again, maybe you can see it from here. It's called Ursula Lake. Sounds like a woman's name, but it isn't. It's about a lake in the interior of British Columbia. I made up the name, but it turns out that there is an Ursula Lake in the Northwest Territory, and I had no idea. But, you know, there'd be more than one Ursula Lake. How many Green Lakes are there in this country? Probably thousands. So this is what they call a tagline to the book, and I just thought I'd read it to you. In the fast-paced, sexy, and very scary literary thriller Ursula Lake, a husband and wife trying to save their marriage and a rock musician trying to get his career back on track find big trouble, natural and maybe supernatural, in the spellbinding wilds of British Columbia. So, just like I write poems that I hope will appeal to readers because they appeal to me. I did the same thing with this novel. So here's how I'm going to just start it off. And oh wait a minute, I've got a reading copy here that's easier to see. Scott Murray was an hour out of Vancouver, British Columbia, heading north on Highway 97 when he saw, ahead and to his right, a deer sprawled in a heap beside the road. "Ah, man," he said, "no animal on earth ever evolved to deal with cars." A sense that he, as human, was to blame made Scott slow down as he passed the deer and so saw its head move. Checking his mirror, no cops, no cars at all, he pulled to the road shoulder and stopped. His watch said 1:04, but the air felt like morning, misty and cool, as he eased out of his blue Datsun pickup, braced himself for what he'd see, then started down the shoulder toward the deer. Across the road, pine, spruce, and fir rose like a green fortress wall. A few feet from the gravel shoulder where he walked, a canyon plunged toward a silver creek, wriggling and glittering far below. In the States, there would have been a guardrail. In BC, that's British Columbia, they would run out of guardrails long before they ran out of risky roads. Reaching the deer, a good-sized whitetail, Scott saw that, yes, it was alive. He also saw there was no hope. The creature's dark, luminous eyes stared straight ahead, its ear cups twisting as if listening for death. The deer's hind quarters were caked in blood. Its back legs were crooked, snapped. Its spine probably was too, hit most likely by a big rig that just kept blasting on. The decent thing would be to end its misery, but how? His only weapon was a hatchet in his truck. Could he, as an act of mercy, hack this deer to death? He'd read a William Stafford poem where a traveler finds a dead doe on a canyon road, drags it to the shoulder, and feels a fawn moving inside. But the deer in front of Scott was not a doe. Antlers had sprouted, 4 blunt prongs like velvet-covered coral. As Scott stared at the antlers, he saw that the deer's eyes were fixed on him. Fixed, he would have sworn, in pain and fear, and something else, a gratitude that he was here, a wish not to die alone. Anthropomorphizing, science would say. Still, Scott touched the creature's flank, just barely moving up and down. He felt lightheaded, probably from seeing so much blood as he stroked the quivering flank. "I'm here," he told the dying animal. "I'm here." The deer gave something like a sigh as Scott kept stroking, staring into those lucent brown eyes. What did they see, he wondered, when they looked at him? He pictured himself standing like a deer in thick woods, smelling the pine, the damp, the tang of leaf decay. The greenery around him swayed in a slight breeze, as if it were breathing. In his mind, he began to run. Still a man, but with the grace and power of a deer, he bounded up high hills and down, following trails that squeezed under gigantic trees and through tangles of briared brush. He ran with what felt like unlimited power and a sense that the deer had called him here for something special, something grand. Was this some Keatsian reverie? Whatever it was, he kept running, the thrill turning to fear. Something was chasing him, coming up behind. He neared a chasm too wide to jump, and still he ran and ran, then launched himself into the air. At that instant, the deer gave another sigh. As if unplugged, the light left its eyes. They didn't close or turn away from Scott. They simply ceased to see. And with that ceasing, his reverie or vision or whatever it had been ceased too. He stopped stroking and let his hand rest on the deer's rib cage. No movement up or down, stone still. Good, he told the forest. No more pain. The sight of the deer's antler buds watered his eyes. No telling how big they'd have grown, how many bucks he'd have fought, fawns he'd have sired. The antlers weren't what anyone would call a rack. Still, some driver might decide to take the head, stuff it, and mount it on a wall. That was not going to happen. No damned way. In Stafford's poem, the speaker, knowing he couldn't save the fawn, thought hard for us all, then pushed the dead doe off a cliff. Scott gripped his deer by its forelegs and, straining every muscle, dragged the creature to the edge of the drop-off. It wasn't sheer, but it was steep. Given a shove, the deer might roll all the way down. Dropping to his knees, Scott placed his hands on the still warm belly, choosing spots where the coarse red-brown hair was free from blood. 3 hard shoves, and the deer was sliding, then rolling into the canyon. Scott watched it roll faster, then snag on a rock and stop halfway to the creek. Some mountain lion, coyote, or bear might find it there. Vultures and crows would feast for sure. Anything left of the carcass would rot and bit by bit finish its journey to the creek. So if you're interested in that, it's called Ursula Lake. It's got some humor in it too, but it's got a lot of darkness in it. It's the original title of that book, which I knew it would never be the title, but it tells you what it is. I called it Canadian Adventure, because I wanted to just send these guys into the woods and on a fishing trip into the woods, and I wanted to see what would happen. Oh, I think I'm done. I think I have more time. I took more time than I thought. So anyway, that's the ending.
That'll be fine. Thanks very much.
Yeah. You're very welcome.
So are there questions?
Why don't you read your parting poem that you had planned to read at the end?
You want me to?
Yeah, please.
Okay, all right, sure. I'll do it. Yeah, that took long. I misjudged the time. Okay, let me get to it. This is a poem basically about how being a human, it's not appropriation to want to enter somebody else's world. That's what humans do. And this is a poem about, you'll see, about different things, always some kind of art, make the speaker of the poem want to be the kind of people that are in the art. That's all it is. And it starts off with about Hank Williams' poem Jambalaya, and the poem is called Down the Bayou. One verse into Jambalaya, and I'm poling my pirogue down the bayou under beards of Spanish moss. I'm wrestling a bull gator for its scaly steaks. I'm telling Yvonne I don't much like Big Macs, me, while crunching crawfish, which creeped me out before. I'm rocking at the Fay Dodo, accordions pumping and wheezing as couples two-step on the houseboat floor. Hey, The Sopranos are on TV. 5 minutes in, I'm calling guys Frankie the Frog and Lenny Lasagna, swigging vino, yelling, forget about it, laughing so hard, fusillades the room. I'm placing family over everything, wondering who to whack, when my stereo, a wedding present from the Don, blares, She Loves You. Suddenly, I'm slurping lobscouse with the lads, tromping through cold Liverpool rain, winking at birds, all of whom I've shagged and now call love. Before I'm halfway to me mum's, I've written yesterday and help. When George clomps on my foot, I bark, "Fuck's sake, you broke me fucking toe." The girls scream louder. The prettiest takes me home as she makes me a nice cup of tea from dark shadows beside her bed. Interview with a vampire hisses, "Open me." 3 pages in, a raven-haired seductress gives me her dark gift. Eternity wraps me in a satin cape, warm and black as the Tuscan night through which my red Ferrari's slicing, me bat flapping overhead, when a pink Hummer roars up, blasting 50 Cent. Right away, I'm styling down dark Bed-Stuy streets, sweaty from hoops with Mike and boxing Sugar Ray. Snug in my ankle-length snow leopard coat, I'm king of the hood, one badass motherfucker. When I take care of my peeps, but I take care of my peeps like my hoes take care of me. I strut into Zorba's place to get my props, but one plate of moussaka chased with ouzo, and I'm scarfing appetite in thick-cut chops. My laugh embraces every ecstasy. My words deserve a dissertation, but you can't learn life from books. You've got to seize beauty and drive death back with zest and truth and charm. So I link arms with everyone and make the whole place shake. Opa, we yell, staggering drunk, woozy from love's sacred cup. Opa, opa, hard breathing, stomping calloused feet, we hold each other up. So, well, thanks for asking. All right, well, now I'm really done, but it's been a pleasure reading for you guys.